Everyone, Matt Straub here, welcoming you to the 2020 Rotoworld Fantasy Basketball Live Draft. We are very excited to have you with us. Over the next couple of hours, we've got a great group of experts ready to draft a 12-team, 9-category fantasy league. Now, we're going to split this up into 4 groups of 3 experts to break down this draft in real time as it happens. So let's bring in our first group of 3 drafters right now. First up, we have, to my right, Steve Alexander, very on brand in the Luka Doncic jersey. You've heard him on the podcast. Down below me, that's Brian Rosenworcel from the band Guster, an avid fantasy hooper. And lower right, that's Drew Dinkmeyer from Establish the Run NBA. Steve, I'll start with you. You're picking 5th. Are you already telegraphing your pick here for us?
Well, it depends on if everybody who saw the show last year or who's ever listened to anything I've ever said probably knows what I'm thinking here. There's also various items around the office that I'm in that may hint at what I might be thinking, but you never know. I got a Trae Young jersey coming in the mail. I could switch things up. You never know.
Brian, you'll be drafting 3rd. Just generally, how is your mindset heading into this thing?
I'm feeling good. I worked really hard on my room background. If anyone's rating my room, I position that light right there. Mostly, I knew that Steve was going to go for Trae Young or Luka Doncic in the first round, and I'm hoping that they're not available to him.
Well, Drew, you're drafting right after Brian in the 4 hole. How are things shaping up for you with that 4th pick?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot in drafts to see how the top goes. If any of these rumors around, James Harden out at nightclubs kind of impacts things and people get scared off, maybe he can slide a little bit, but we'll see. 4th spot is also a very opportune spot for me to be very on brand with my NBA Twitter game. So I'm hoping that a player that I love very dearly will be available.
All right, well, we're just about a minute from this thing starting. Josh Lloyd from basketballmonster.com will be picking 1st, followed by Raphael Johnson of Rotoworld. Brian, as I mentioned, picking 3rd. 4th, Drew. 5th is Steve. So we've got you guys 3, 4, 5 here. Dalton Del Don from Yahoo, who will be joining us later, is 6th. Jonas Nader from Rotoworld will be 7th, followed by Scott Bogman, Jaren Jackson, Renee Miller, Ryan Knaus, and John Impemba for this 12-team, 13-round. As I said, this is a 9-category fantasy league we're drafting here, guys. So we're about 35 seconds from starting. Steve, who are you thinking? Is there an obvious number 1 pick? It feels a little less obvious than in recent years.
First of all, is Brian wearing a Riverfront Stadium shirt?
I have to look. Yeah, I am. How did you tell?
Dude, that's where I watched all my baseball growing up as a kid.
I didn't know that.
I had a pair of green seats that were actually from the stadium. The number 1 pick is not super obvious because, as Drew alluded to, James Harden is in limbo. So I think if James Harden is all in with the Rockets and there's none of this drama going on, it's a no-brainer. But now things are a little interesting.
Well, we have Josh Lloyd on the clock here, and there it is, James Harden 1st. Drew, given all the kind of turmoil surrounding Harden in Houston, is that the pick you'd be making 1st overall?
I think I still would. I think he has such a dominant 9-category game compared to the other stars. And really everybody up at the top comes with a little bit of a risk to them. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns has had some quotes that suggest, where's his mind at kind of coming into the basketball season. He has a very tumultuous offseason dealing with COVID rampaging through his family. And Harden, with the trade rumors, if he plays with Houston, he's a very, very clear number 1. If he got moved to Brooklyn, there could be a lot more competition for the rates that really challenge things. So I think Harden, AD, Karl Anthony Towns, probably the top 3 that are kind of working around there, but I don't think it's as clear as in past years. All
right, well, we saw Anthony Davis go 2nd to Raphael. Brian, you're on the clock now. Talk us through what you're thinking here.
Well,
if anything.
Karl Anthony Towns at this point in his career is just a boring player for me. And Luka Doncic is really exciting. I've never owned him. Steve always grabs him early. He's always a reach. And I have to grab Luka and deny Steve Luka.
You are
realized,
never invited back ever
that's
again.
fine.
Wow.
It's all worth it. Yeah.
Banned.
Bombshell. We got to figure out how to transfer that jersey over to Steve, and I got to figure out how to sort out this relationship because I can sense the tension in the room. Drew, awkward moment now for you to draft in the aftermath of, but talk us through it here.
Really awkward. I feel, in between a scorned lover set here. But I had my eyes on a player that I love dearly, Nikola Jokic, who I think is a 9-category beast, can fill it up from all over. I love getting good free throw percentage and assists for my bigs. I think it's a sneaky way to be able to build rosters. But Karl-Anthony Towns is still there too. I'm going to still lean with my heart a little bit here with Jokic. Mike Malone quotes talking about them trying to outscore everybody and shoot for 130 a game. So I'm gonna go Jokic and draft with my heart. But Cat is a tough guy to pass over there.
All right, well, Steve, that takes us straight to you. Does this immediately put you in a tailspin? What's the mindset at Dr. A headquarters right now?
Well, I knew when I invited Rosenworcel to do this that there was a chance that this was going to happen. Really the only reason I play fantasy hoops is to draft Luka. There's really no other point for me. But I guess he won't be there when it gets back to me. And my other guy is Trae Young, Ice Trae. So I'm drafting Trae Young, who is arguably the second most exciting young player in the NBA.
So Steve is fully on tilt here already, Brian. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, Trae Young going as a reach for Steve was very predictable.
All right, well, Dalton just took Steph Curry. As you'll see in a little bit, he's wearing an NBA Jam shirt with Steph's face on it. So no huge surprise there.
I was thinking about Steph right there.
Where do you guys land on Steph coming off a season where he only played 5 games? You just totally put that in the past, or do you have to kind of keep that in mind, Drew?
Yeah, I think, it's a tough situation. Obviously, Klay Thompson's injury puts more pressure on that games played total for Steph because, with Golden State, if they're going for it, Steph is going to be out there as much as he possibly can. If they're in a down year, they might take more time with him like they did last year. He's just such a 9-cap monster, though, on the percentages, and the usage rates should surge into the low 30s, even upwards of mid 30s with the roster around him. Steve Kerr's had some quotes around him playing like 34 minutes a game and them saying they want to keep him to that, which I thought was interesting. I think there could be a monster Steph Curry season left in him. And selfishly, I kind of hope there is still one more left in him. Those Warriors teams before KD were just so much fun to watch. And I hope we have some of those classic Steph games again this season.
Brian, what are your feelings on Steph coming off his lost season?
I mean, I love the idea of him having a huge comeback and just putting up monster stats. He's playing with Kelly Oubre this year. He's playing with Wiseman, the center that they drafted. So it's going to be a new team. He's just pretty much playing with Draymond and a bunch of guys he doesn't really play with in the past. So it's a bit of a wild card, but it's also a pretty safe bet.
All right, well, let's get caught up. After Curry, Karl-Anthony Towns went 7th to Jonas Nader. Scott Bogman took Damian Lillard. Jason Tatum went 9th to Jared. And then we just saw John Collins go 10th to Renee. Steve, you and I have talked quite a bit about John Collins. Now, the Hawks got a lot deeper. What's your level of concern, and is Collins still a clear-cut first-round guy for you, given that he's now got Danilo Gallinari playing the same position? The Hawks are a lot deeper.
Yeah, last time you and I talked about it, I think I was good with Collins. Then I talked to another buddy of mine, and I started thinking about it. The Hawks they're so deep that somebody is going to have to take a hit, and I think Collins, he's not going to put up. The numbers aren't going to be worse than they were last year, but I don't know that he is in a position where he can really take a big step forward. Having said that, I mean, he's a first round talent. I just feel a little bit better taking him in the second round, I think.
Couple intriguing picks, guys, toward the end of the first round there. Giannis goes 11th to Ryan, and then John takes Russell Westbrook 12th. I'm a little surprised to see Westbrook going that early. What are your thoughts on him, Drew, with the move to DC?
I think the productivity will be similar for Russ as we've seen the last few years. I think the challenge with Russ is obviously in a 9-cat format. there's two categories he really hits you hard on often, which is field goal and free throw and turnover. And then the field goal percentage hasn't been particularly great. 3-point shooting hasn't been particularly great. So for me, he's not a first round pick in a 9-cat format. I think he's one of these players that it really depends on the format that you're playing in fantasy hoops. If you're playing points-based leagues, much more valuable player. But as you extend out into categories, some of those categories he can be a real detriment towards.
Well, and guys, Giannis to me is also a guy who goes first round based on name recognition. But when you talk about a guy who will completely sink you in a category before the season even starts, his free throw percentage around 63 on 10 attempts per game. You're basically punting free throws, Brian. Will you find yourself drafting Giannis much as this season unfolds early on?
If you're going to draft Giannis, you might want to look at Drummond. You might want to consider punting that category. But if he's falling to 11th, I'm absolutely grabbing him there.
Well, one of the buzziest names of this pre-draft season or this draft season that we're now in, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, goes to Renee. Obviously, the logic is Gilgeous-Alexander is going to have, be the focal point. Steve, do you think he's going to validate that early second round draft position?
Yeah, she's banned too. That was my next pick. So there's two people we don't have to worry about next year. No, I thought it was a great pick. I'm all about Shai. He's the only offensive weapon OKC has left, and I just don't see how he doesn't dominate every aspect of the game this year. I love him.
Well, Drew, we talked about him on our podcast recently, and got some response from people saying, well, the cupboard's basically so bare there that defense are going to be able to key in on him. His field goal percentage is really going to suffer. Where do you land on that?
Yeah, I have the field goal percentage dropping about 20 points. So I think it is going to suffer, but I think you're just going to get a ton of volume that's really going to kind of overwhelm. I do think he'll be more productive in points types formats. The turnover rate is a concern. They're saying they're going to have the ball in his hands a ton, but you're just going to get so much opportunity there and so many minutes per game and so much usage that I think some of the more primary statistics that people look at, points, rebounds, assists, steals, I think those things are all going to be very, very strong for Shai. I was targeting him in my next pick coming back if he had gotten back to me, which it sounds like you wouldn't have with Doc. So fine by me that he's gone then, because it would have been more heartbreaking for it to happen right before me.
It's a load management bonanza here in the second round, guys. We had Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Kevin Durant, all guys potentially who could see some. Oh, and then make it a fourth, Joel Embiid. So 4 in a row. That brings us to you, Steve. What are you looking at for this next pick? You basically already had your draft ruined.
The draft is ruined. I don't even know where I am right now. I'm looking at a few different guys. I may just keep the load management thing going with a player that was listed as probable for every single game he played in last year. Does the 20th pick for LeBron sound about right? It kind of does to me. But man, the load management stuff is pretty frightening with that whole team. Yeah, I'm going to do it. He also qualifies at point guard, shooting guard, and small forward, which I kind of like. I'm just worried about missed games, but I'm taking LeBron.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Drew.
Three positional eligibilities in a league where you only have 3 bench players. Pretty valuable.
Yeah.
So I would have snagged LeBron there too. I think there's certainly lots of concerns with the rest, and they're being very outward and vocal and upfront about those intentions. Probably some concerns on the defensive statistics as well, since LeBron's jokingly talked about just cherry picking the first half of the season all year long. But I think that's second round value on LeBron is great, and especially the positional eligibility is a real help. All my targets were snagged from me, so I feel a little bit bare here, but I also feel like the top guy left on the board is a good value overall, and that's Bradley Beal. Certainly some of the opportunities are going to go by the wayside for Beal with Russell Westbrook coming to town and soaking up a ton of usage and opportunity. But I think that'll help some of the efficiency stuff. And I think they're just going to be a team that continues to play offense first and very, very fast. And so Beal's one of these guys, again, positional eligibility, the shooting guard, small forward eligibility, get some of those dimes, sneaky dimes as well if you're not going straight point guard early. So I'll take Bradley Beal.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to you, Brian. What are you looking at here for your second round pick? Number. What? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm looking at young players who are ascending right now. After seeing that run of LeBron and Kawhi and KD and Paul George and all these guys who are going to be load managed, I'm feeling really good about DeAndre Ayton. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I probably have only read it and never have actually heard it pronounced. But I feel really good about starting with Luka and Ayton as my first two picks. I got a big, I got a small. I'm crushing rebounds. I like it.
Hey, Steve, what are your feelings on Ayton when it comes to, playing with Chris Paul? He had such a frustrating season last year. We're going to be back to Brian in a second here, but quickly on Ayton with the suspension and everything, do you think he's a guy who is primed to live up to that second round pick?
I mean, it's now or never for Ayton. I kind of thought he was going to be better than he has been up to this point in his career. Playing with Chris Paul can only help. I think it's a good pairing, a good matchup, and I do think Ayton's going to have a good year.
All right. Well, we flew around that turn. Jimmy Butler, Yusuf Nurkic to Josh Lloyd, and then Fred VanVleet to Josh as well, followed by Nikola Vucevic for Raphael in his third pick. So, Brian, that's now back to you. You got a point guard. You got a center. You've got a couple young guys. Are you going to continue that trend?
I mean, like now we're at the point in the draft where you can prove how awesome you are by like really digging in and like getting someone that just shocks everyone because you're not actually going to play this team. You're just trying to look cool. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay with an exciting team though. And I'm going to it's like a high risk, high reward now if I throw Zion in there and I draft him third to go with Ayton and Luka. I got a young, exciting team, guys.
All right, well, we'll have plenty of chance to talk about Zion in a minute here and his fantasy outlook. But, Drew, you are actually on the clock now for your third-round pick. Where are you at?
Yeah, this is tough. I've got three players here, two Utah Jazz members that I'm considering, and then Pascal Siakam. And I kind of am going back and forth with the start that I have to my team. Jokic and Beal gives me some flexibility on the percentages, certainly, and gives me, a decent bit of three-point shooting and some assists as well. I think I'm leaning big here. And the question is, is Siakam what we saw in the playoffs? Or is he the playoffs in the bubble season, or is he kind of what he was before? And it's just a big difference in terms of his value. And I kind of keep going back and forth on it. So I'm between Gobert and Siakam. Hard to pass on Donovan Mitchell, but I think I've got a lot of scoring and a lot of kind of guards type statistics with Beal and Jokic. And so I think I'm going to pull the trigger on Gobert. Get some of those blocks to go with Jokic. I need a big who can support some of the defensive statistics, specifically on the blocks side. So Rudy Gobert is my choice.
I was quite sure you were headed toward Siakam there. So a couple of pump fakes there, because first Brian pump faked us with his whole draft plan and then switched it up. And then, yeah, I mean, that's a solid pick on Gobert. And Steve, that brings us to you. Do you have the guy you actually want here this time?
Well, yeah, this is going to be the reach of all reaches right here, boys and girls and people. If I don't take this guy now, he's not going to be there when it comes back to me. I got a long wait. There's guys in this room that are waiting to pull the trigger on my man, Michael Porter Jr., who's going to be starting for your Denver Nuggets, and he is going to go crazy. It's too early. He's a fourth or fifth round guy, not a third. But it was now or never. I've been destroyed once or twice already. Can't let it happen again.
Yeah, the aftershocks of the Luka Doncic pick here and are being felt. Guys, I want to circle back to Zion because I think he's a really polarizing guy in fantasy leagues. Drew, let's start with you. Where do you land on Zion as a fantasy prospect, considering we didn't see the defensive stats from him when he played last year? Seems like maybe more of a points league guy unless he really ups those. What are your thoughts on him as far as potentially improving in some of those categories?
Yeah, that's the big question mark. Obviously, it was a pretty small sample with Zion, but it was a pretty small sample that we saw in college at Duke where he did get all those steals and blocks. I have a feeling that with Stan Van Gundy, shout out to JJ Redick and his quotes, that there'll be a little bit more of a focus on the defensive end in New Orleans this year. But that's really the big difference maker for Zion. We know the field goal percentage is going to be great. We know the points and rebounds are going to be great. We know anybody who wants to pad their stats getting rebounds playing alongside Steven Adams is a great thing. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for upside for Zion, but really the defensive statistics are going to be the thing that changes whether he's, a late first, early second round kind of upside pick, or whether he's a guy that ends up delivering kind of third, fourth round value because those stats are lacking.
Brian, quickly, you guys are almost out of here. We're swapping you guys out after the third round. Just down the road from you, Kyrie Irving goes there in the third round. Only played 20 games last year. Is that a guy you would see yourself drafting given all the risk and all the potential reward?
I mean, just living in Brooklyn and looking at this team that I think I root for this team, but I don't even recognize this team. It's hard. I mean, Kyrie is a proven head case. He's a proven immense talent. Maybe KD is going to keep him in check. But I think that if you're drafting Kyrie, you're keeping your fingers crossed that he's going to play. And I don't know if he's going to even play enough games to merit a third-round pick.
I'm with you.
Drew?
Not taking Kyrie or
Yeah, Kyrie's a tough one to rely on. Just so many missed games over the last few years, and you got to figure that, with the way that they're going to be playing things, I think their focus is entirely going to be on positioning themselves the best they can for the playoffs and not necessarily having a great regular season. So I have the same concerns around Kyrie, and I also just have concerns, I think, with both Kevin Durant and Kyrie and James Harden right now with these trade rumors floating around. If Harden was to land in Brooklyn, yeah, that's great for the Nets, but from a fantasy perspective, there's only one ball, and all those guys are used to having the ball all the time. So I think there's probably more downside than upside to Kyrie at this point.
Well, Brian, we're out of here in a minute with you. Any closing thoughts for you on your team quickly, your first three picks?
I feel like we've got a lot of question marks when you go Zion and Ayton. I got to really hope for the best there. Just to be able to have Luka on my team and not on Steve's team while he's wearing a Luka jersey it was no regrets.
All right. Well, Steve, we'll be hearing from you a little later on for a postmortem after the draft. You guys can follow Drew at Drew Dinkmeyer. You can follow Brian at Bull_of_Wursel. So just figure out how to spell that one. Got to get as many underscores into that Twitter handle as you can. You guys can stop talking and focus on drafting right now. Thank you for joining us, fellas. We'll see you. All right, everyone. Want to quickly remind you that you can dominate your drafts with Rotoworld's NBA Draft Guide. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can get access to hundreds of player profiles, rankings for 8-cat, 9-cat, points and dynasty leagues, customizable projections, positional tiers, and much more. Go to rotoworld.com/edge for more and use promo code DRAFT10 for $10 off any annual premium package. Right now, we're going to welcome in our second group of experts. There's Ryan Knaus. There's Renee Miller. Both of their work you can see on Rotoworld. And John Impemba from Fantasy Alarm. Guys, how are you doing? Have you been following the draft so far? And I guess let's just go around the room. Ryan, actually, Renee and John, we'll hear from you in a second. Ryan conveniently is on the clock. So, Ryan, talk us through what you're thinking here.
Well, I'm thinking I just got sniped on Andre Drummond because my team is clearly, I started with Giannis and then Bam and then Ben Simmons. So I was going full punt free throw percentage. I thought for sure Drummond would be there for me and I would have a lock on it. But unfortunately, John took him right out from under me with one pick before. So I'm going to pivot and take a shot on a young point guard. And I'm torn between two. But I am going to go with De'Aaron Fox.
Staying on brand with the bricked free throws.
Bricked free throws are fine with me for now. And, it's not something that I intended to do, but when Giannis falls to number 11, you kind of have to take him. Sure. So I decided, that's fine if I lose one category, but stack. I mean, with Ben Simmons, Bam, and Giannis, I wish triple doubles were a category, put it that way.
All right, well, John, we'll hear from you in a second about your team so far. Renee, you're on the clock, so let us know how you feel about your team, and what are you thinking on this pick?
Hey, everyone. I am, like everyone else, have been sniped a couple times. Glad I got to get one snipe of my own in with Gilgeous-Alexander. I know he's a popular man around this draft. I'm thinking another big here. I feel like the last time I was in a league with you guys with two centers, I kind of missed the boat a little bit. So I'm going to go with another big, and there's a lot of options here, and I'm going to echo Brian a little bit and go with somebody I think could be exciting in Christian Wood. New home, new opportunities, good player.
Well, Steve Alexander's not here, but I'm sure he just fell out of his chair with that pick, Renee. So
he chatted it.
Yeah.
I am officially his least favorite person.
I think Steve has banned about 8 different people already, and we're only early in round 4. John, let's hear from you. You kind of, in my mind, took maybe the big bombshell pick so far with Russell Westbrook 12. Talk about that one and just your draft so far.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I understand, being a 9-category league like you guys were mentioning, he's going to struggle with the turnovers, and, he's not going to give me a lot of 3-point percentage and free throw percentage maybe down there as well. But I like the fact that he's still filling up the box score. I mean, playing next to a guy like Harden last year, he still gave you, over 20 points per game, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. And I was going into a new situation in Washington where Bradley Beal is a high usage player, but he's not the usage player that James Harden is. And I think we're going to see almost closer to a player that we saw from Westbrook in his Thunder days, where maybe he was nearing a triple-double. He averaged a triple-double for 3 seasons. So I certainly understand the category format here, and I definitely felt like it was a little bit of a reach at the time. But I just like the spot for him. I like what he can bring to my team. And, I feel like some of his deficiencies that he has, I could follow up and sort of, fix as we move down the draft. I replaced his 3-point shooting deficiencies with Booker right after that, Zach LaVine. So while he has some weaknesses, I'm okay with go ahead and taking a guy that could, give me 4 categories. Last year defensively, he averaged over a steal per game as well. So just some solid numbers all around there.
Yeah, and we did see Westbrook fix some of those percentage issues to some extent last year, 47 from the field, 76 from the line. Yeah. So maybe he's not going to quite be the anchor he was in those areas in recent years. Just getting caught up after Renee took Christian Wood, John Morant went to Jared. Scott took Pascal Siakam, who was being talked about in round 3. Brandon Ingram then went, Jamal Murray, Buddy Hield. Renee, any of those recent picks or any of the picks in round 4 or after you really standing out to you?
Siakam was one that I was considering too. I know Drew talked about him earlier. And John Morant too. I think he was one that the pre-draft rankings had I think really low, and I think he's good value here at round 4.
Ryan, I want to ask you. We saw LeBron go in the second round to Steve. We've seen some other guys. Jokic went early, of course. Some of these guys who were in the NBA bubble deep into the playoffs. Jimmy Butler too. What do you make of these guys where they played so deep into last season, such a quick turnaround? These are also some of these guys over 30 years old. Are you concerned about LeBron, Butler, and players along those lines being managed a lot early in the season potentially?
Yes, it is situational, of course. So LeBron, absolutely. I think Drew mentioned earlier that LeBron is basically, might cherry pick some games, definitely going to get rest days. You could say the same thing for Anthony Davis. Really, any veteran on that team, they're obviously geared up to just win another championship. That's their sole concern. So I'm surprised that Steve took LeBron there. He's not at his best in 9-cat. That's LeBron, not Steve. And, with the IR concerns added to it, I think that's a tough pick. It's different for a guy like Jimmy Butler, who has built his career. I mean, he's super durable. That's part of the reason fantasy owners love him, as well as high volume, excellent free throw percentages, kind of across the board stats. But I don't look at him as big of a risk to rest. I feel like he's a guy who just wants to be out there every single game at this point in his career. And Jokic and Jamal Murray, those types of guys, younger. Jokic, maybe the short off season was good because he's gotten out of shape a couple times over the summers with months and months to rest. So hey, maybe that plays into his favor.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not enough time for Jokic to get out of shape. Just getting us caught up. Buddy Hield to Steve, then Kyle Lowry, Domantas Sabonis, CJ McCollum, D'Angelo Russell to finish out round 4. Now we're into round 5. Jonas Valanciunas, Drew Holiday, and then DeMar DeRozan to Rosenworcel. Some nice synergy there. John, what do you think of Drew Holiday in Milwaukee? This is a player who I think was going in toward the end of the first round in a lot of fantasy drafts last year. He's all the way to round 5 here. Is that a guy? Do you see that as good value at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with him now is that he's obviously moving to a team where he has to compete with, Giannis for touches, which he's not going to win. And then Middleton's there as well, has always been sort of the number 2 player there. So, he's largely just replacing the role that Eric Bledsoe had on that team. And we saw, when Bledsoe joined that organization, how his numbers had dipped down from when he was with prior teams. So, I don't really know exactly how much upside Holiday is going to have, knowing that he's playing third fiddle in that offense. But, I think he's going to be at least a very safe plays and give you a lot of nice floor numbers. So I don't hate him in round 5. I think you could obviously maybe go, more boom or bust with some higher upside players in this round. But I think he's safe. He's a guy that you can rely on night in, night out.
Well, Renee, along the lines that John was just talking about, we saw Lonzo Ball go 3 picks after Drew Holiday. You're talking about kind of a proven, safe veteran versus an upside young guy. Where do you land when you come to decide between those 2 point guards?
That's tough. I'd probably go with Drew Holiday, just because of that consistency in the multi-category production that he's going to give night in and night out. I think Ball is like really good when he's really good, but really bad when he's not. So rather than the high-low sort of cardiac, I think he's more of a heart attack player, I guess is what I'm saying, Ball.
Ryan, Mitchell Robinson and Tom Thibodeau, I think, is an interesting pairing, an explosive, exciting young guy playing for a coach who sort of famously loves to play veterans. Do you think there's a chance that Robinson can win that position battle with Nerlens Noel in New York and validate going this early in the draft?
There's definitely a chance, simply because he has that potential. We've seen what he can do on a per minute basis. Fantastic. That comes with the massive asterisk that per minute he also averages a ton of fouls. So I think in 36 minutes he's averaging 7 personal fouls, something like that. So if he can't avoid that, and it was a topic of conversation before last year, and he said, I'm gonna keep my hands up, stay vertical, all these different things he was going to do to stay out of foul trouble. None of them worked. Now you have a coach who, as you said, tends to shy away from young players. If we see mental lapses on the court, he's not afraid to yank you. He wants maximum defensive effort every possession. We have not seen that from Mitchell Robinson. So I think drafting him this early was a bit of a reach just because of the big letdown from last year. And I'm not sure that with Nerlens Noel there, that Mitch Rob has a real path to 30 minutes a game.
John, what are your thoughts on Mitchell Robinson? It was a scarring experience for some of us took him in early in drafts last year.
Yeah, Mitch Robinson is actually one of my favorite DFS plays for that reason. Basically, he's so boom or bust. He doesn't really need a ton of minutes to be overly effective, but the fouls, man, that's just something that he really has to learn from. Hopefully, a veteran coach like Thibodeau can rein that in a little bit. Maybe, being Thibodeau being more of a defensive coach can help him out and keep him out of foul trouble so he can stay on the floor. But to your point, he does like to play veterans. The one thing, though, is if he does start, Thibodeau does typically like to also play starters for as many minutes as they could possibly handle. So if it's something that he can change this year, then there's definitely some upside. But like you guys are saying right now, it's another kind of like high upside, low floor play.
Well, some fresh chances for all of you to snipe one another here as we go back to back to back. Renee, you just took OG Anunoby. What's the thought process on that pick?
Again, another kind of multi-category guy. I'm really trying to stretch myself here because I write a lot of the DFS NBA content for Rotoworld and don't really play in season-long leagues except for with you guys. So trying to get my head around the multi-category 9-cat scoring format versus points, and just a guy that I think can do anything, that can play a lot of minutes when he's healthy, and just kind of all around.
All right,
and a couple of people I was really looking at got taken right before me. So,
and that would be.
I wanted to say too, I like the Jaren Jackson pick.
Jaren Jackson, yeah, it potentially a great value there. Coming off knee surgery, probably the only reason he went that late. Ryan, you just took. Go ahead, Ryan.
In a league with 2 IR spots, which we have, that makes Jaren Jackson Jr. that much more appealing for sure.
Tell us about your Jaylen Brown pick, Ryan.
I love Jaylen Brown. I think without Gordon Hayward there, Brown and Marcus Smart are going to get a big boost. I love Jaylen Brown, especially because he's not a good free throw shooter. I don't care about that. So that bumps him up probably a round or two even in my book. So I have him as an easy top 50 value. So that was a pretty simple pick for me. He gives me positional versatility too, which I was looking for.
John, you are on the clock for 2 here. Your first one was Tobias Harris. What's the thought with this next pick or with the Harris pick? It was both.
Yeah, so I was actually hoping to get Jillian Brown myself, being from Boston. That was kind of a guy I like for all the same kind of reasons you pointed out. There is no Gordon Hayward. We know Kemba is going to be, limited to start, may not even begin the year healthy. And, we've seen Jalen really take those next leaps in his career the past couple seasons. So I was expecting maybe to get him, but I'm happy with Tobias Harris here as well. Again, just kind of a safe category guy that fills up across the board. I like that he can shoot some threes. He's not a terrible free throw shooter. Field goal percentage is fine. He rebounds and scores. So it kind of fills it all for me at a position, power forward, small forward, where depth kind of disappears. So I kind of like grabbing him there. And then another guy that I'm actually going to take on the board right now, you mentioned the IR spot. It was somebody I wasn't sure how quickly he was going to be taken, but I'm going to take Porzingis. I know he's not going to be due back till mid-January. Maybe going to miss the first couple of weeks of the season. But as the season gets rolling along, when we saw last year when he was on the floor and healthy, he was putting up some big-time numbers. He even figured out finally him and Luka got going together. So, can stash him for now and then get that production later in the year.
In the past, we've said, won't be back until January. Seemed like a long time. Very different story this year.
Yeah, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks,
Exactly. So, Ryan, you're up now for your 6th round pick. What are you thinking?
I'm going to take Miles Turner. Simply because round 6 feels like a great place for him. The Pacers have a new coach, Nate Bjorkgren, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and he wants to push the pace. I think that plays into everybody's fantasy favor. That's always good news to hear. It doesn't always pan out, of course. Coaches might not have the personnel. And the real question is how Miles Turner can play alongside Domantas Sabonis. So we saw last year he was relegated to a stretch 5, stretch 4 kind of role where he was at the perimeter most of the time. Didn't do his rebounding numbers any favors. I'm looking for a minor bounce back season here. And as I said, I think round 6 is kind of his floor. So it's a pretty safe pick. And it gives me another center eligible guy in a league that requires 2 centers.
Well, and I think because of those blocks, the shot blocking, he's basically guaranteed a floor in a worst case scenario. So
exactly.
He's boring at worst, but still valuable. Renee, you just took a guy who I wouldn't describe as boring at all, maybe more exciting, boomer bust, Thomas Bryant. So take us through that one.
Yeah, I like the Wizards to really take a step forward. I think they'll be infused and excited by having Russell Westbrook there. We've already talked about Beale a little bit. And Bryant, when he played 30 minutes, he was great. I mean, he was like a night in, night out DFS play. And again, with my fear of running out of centers, I'm going to have to shift gears here coming up. But I wanted to get another solid one, the clear starter.
Well, a big run on big men here. Porzingis, Turner, Thomas Bryant, Hassan Whiteside, now with the Kings, of course, and LaMarcus Aldridge, followed by DeJounte Murray. John, I want to ask you about Aldridge. Saw him have a career best in 3-pointers last year, 1.2 per game, a career best 1.6 blocks in his mid-30s.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on drafting a player like Aldridge, who, we all tend to be scared of players in their mid-30s, but maybe he's one of the exceptions to that rule?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually interesting to see him sort of take those leaps in the outside game, and I feel like we're seeing a lot of the veteran players sort of, to extend their career almost, start becoming 3-point shooters. We saw it of Vince Carter during his final years as well. So, we see Aldridge now, his attempts went down a little bit, his points per game and rebounds went down. He's playing further away from the basket, but he's being committed to shooting threes. Now, my question this year, are they going to continue to play him at the center position where he played the majority of the time last year? They did sign, Jakob Poeltl to an extension this season. Do they move Aldridge back to the power forward and let him play, the stretch 4 position? So I don't mind if that's what they're going to do, save his body a little bit and let him sort of just hang on the perimeter. You just have to know that, the rebounds could come down again. The block number is definitely an interesting thing to see him go up 1.6, but that could be because he's playing the center spot. So I'm going to be interested to see how they utilize him this year.
All right. Well, Renee, we're almost at the end of round 6. That means you guys are out of here in a second. Quickly want to get your parting thoughts on your squad through 6 picks.
It's shaping up. I've got some guys I like. I don't have anybody I feel bad about. My bigs are covered. I've got a lot of versatility with Anunoby and Middleton, the stud and Gilgeous-Alexander.
All right. Well, Ryan, we'll be hearing from you later on as well to kind of give a postmortem on this thing. You can follow these guys. Oh, go ahead.
Be sure to ask the next group about Steve's pick of Chris Boucher at this last round. That was a reach.
Okay. We'll get there. You can follow these guys at Knaus_RW, at Renee Miller 01, at J Impemba 777. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Want to take a second to remind you all to check out the Rotoworld Fantasy Basketball Podcast hosted by me, featuring a number of the writers you're hearing and seeing here today. During the season, we'll be releasing new episodes every Tuesday and Friday, talking waiver wire pickups, season-long trends, and plenty of DFS as well. Subscribe to the Rotoworld Fantasy Basketball Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen. All right, that's going to bring us now to rounds 7 through 9 of our draft as we welcome in our next group of experts. Jonas Nader to my right. Below him, Dalton Del Don from Yahoo Sports and Scott Bogman from the In This League podcast. Lower left with the Texas Longhorns insignia behind him. Fellas, welcome. Just getting caught up. Let's see, who's up next? Well, Jonas, you're going to be on the clock next here as I attempt to expand the draft window. So, Jonas, why don't you take us through what you... Oh, Dalton, you're actually up. My bad. Take us through what you're thinking for your 7th round pick.
All right, well, DeJounte Murray was stolen from me with my last pick, one pick before me. So I also like Derek White. I like what the Spurs are doing with the backcourt. So I will go there. But, man, this is so wild jumping in and out trying to follow this draft. And it's been a fun one so far, a very interesting one. Trae Young went directly before me in round 1. Had to be a homer. I went with my guy, Stephen Curry. And then one pick before me, Durant went round 2. I nearly went with my NBA Jam t-shirt with Durant and Curry to start it off. But anyway, fun draft so far.
All right, Jonas, you're on the clock. You've made 6 picks so far. What are you thinking here?
So here's my thinking. I've already won the league by taking Jaren Jackson in the 5th round. So I'm just gonna get some insurance here with Brandon Clark, the guy who's going to be starting for him for the first month. This is a guy. His steal rate dropped dramatically in the NBA, but I think that picks back up. And this is a guy who was averaging like 7 stocks per 36 minutes in college. I'm taking Brandon Clark here, and I'm very happy with that at 79 overall.
All right. Well, Scott, now you are up here with your 7th round pick. You just went LaMarcus Aldridge last round. 3 power forwards in a row for you. What direction are you headed?
Yeah, I started out the draft going with guards, very, very heavy guards. Lillard, Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard as my first 3 picks. So I have worked on the other end coming up here. And I think I'm going to go with another big man. The centers start to get really, really thin. I think Renee was alluding to that earlier. So I'm going to take Lauri Markkanen here. Bulls got a new coach. I'm excited to see what he is going to do there. And it adds to my front court, which I need after spending so many of those early picks on guards.
Guys, Steve Alexander's basically been on tilt from moment 1 of this draft when Luka Doncic was taken from him. He took Chris Boucher in round 6. Dalton, do you have an opinion on that pick? Does that feel early to you for a guy like Boucher, who potentially is only playing minutes in the 20s?
I mean, obviously it's a bit of a gamble, but no, I thought it was fine, especially if you needed a big there. The upsides right there. This draft has been very aggressive. If Steve wouldn't have taken him there, he probably wouldn't have came back. So I have no problem with it. This draft has been full of aggressive picks, so I'm all for it. He's a guy that could be a real big upside pick if he does get the minutes. I like it actually.
Lauri Markkanen is a player who I think is super polarizing for people. And Jonas, I want to get your opinion on Lauri Markkanen, taking 1 pick after Brandon Clark. Basically, are you in or out on Markkanen this year?
In this round, I'm in. I definitely buy what Bogman's saying. I mean, Jim Boylan completely misused him last year. He's not like a stand and still spot up shooter. He needs to be more active around the rim. I think this is a perfect bounce back opportunity for him. And I don't want to say a player that's already on the board still here is Wendell Carter Jr. is another bounce back candidate in Chicago. Everyone on that team's getting a bump without Jim Boylan. Let's just be honest. So I love the pick.
Now, we just saw Devontae Graham go, Scott. I think the logical question is, how does this backcourt shake out with LaMelo Ball there? And you, of course, have Terry Rozier there as well. Graham got so much volume last year. He was kind of a headache, maybe more than kind of a headache in percentage-based leagues with his field goal percentage. Is that a guy you would find yourself drafting this year?
Yeah, I was actually a little upset that he went. So that is a great pick here. I mean, you know, you have to make sure that you have a good field goal percentage. Him shooting 38.2% last year is not fun, but he is a late round guy that has a bunch of assists. There is a little bit of diciness, as you mentioned, going into the season with him because of the messed up backcourt. I mean, not messed up really, but so many options there. But I do think he has earned his spot. So I like that pick in this round.
All right. Well, after Markkanen, who we talked about, Rubio, the aforementioned Devontae Graham, Jeremy Grant ticketed for a potentially much bigger role in Detroit. Dalton, are you buying into that narrative that Grant, the Detroit Piston, who wanted a bigger role with the move to Detroit, actually gets it?
Yes, there's not a lot of other options there. Of course, Blake Griffin will suffer an injury before we know it. Like Delon Wright is a sleeper there. Killian Hayes right away is one of my favorite rookies in fantasy. But yeah, Grant wouldn't be surprised if he quickly became the man there. So he's another fun, aggressive pick. I'll circle back to my aggressive picks here. MPJ went right before me in round 3. Draft Michael Porter Jr. I wasn't in the room, so I couldn't hear the discussion. But man, that allowed me to get Kyrie Irving, which I'm assembling one of the most injury-prone fantasy teams known to man here. So we'll see if I can add a couple more here before it's done. But what a start here with Curry, Embiid, and Kyrie Irving, and then later adding Gordon Hayward. So I'm definitely swinging for the fences here with my picks as far as taking some risks.
You taking Curry was actually taken off the board when you showed up in that NBA Jam shirt with Curry's face on it. But yeah, the Michael Porter Jr. pick, there was so much chaos in those first 3 rounds. I don't even know if we really got a chance to properly react to it. Jonas, what are your thoughts on Michael Porter Jr. in the 3rd round? I think we all agree that was early. How early do you think that was?
I mean, we all laughed at Steve last year when he picked Luka number 1 overall, and then he just had this monster year. So when Steve does something, it gets your attention. I don't mind it. Like, I've had 3 drafts so far where I've seen Michael Porter Jr. go round 5 and 6, where I had him like on my queue ready to go. So if you really want him on your team this year, I don't think 3rd round's that bad, to be honest, because this was a guy that was, I think it was 8th or 9th in the bubble for first round value. So a really impressive player. I'm not buying the whole narrative that Malone's going to like hold him back. I think he's going to be a star this year. And I think 3rd round in a league with competitive managers like this, I think that's where you need to take him.
Scott, you're coming up here with your 8th round pick. We just saw Kobe White go off the board. We talked about the post Jim Boylan Bulls. Do you like Kobe White to continue some of what we saw down the stretch last year? And as you keep going, take us through what you're thinking with this next pick.
Yeah, I do like Kobe White this year. I think there's a lot of nice point guards around here, but he offers some quality upside. For my pick, I'm going to go with a point guard with some downside for sure, but he's coming back. He says he's healthy, just got traded to a new team. I'm going to take my new guy, John Wall. I am a Rockets fan, so I'm going to indulge myself a little bit here. But after going with 4 straight forward center qualifying players, after starting out with 3 guards, I'm going to make that. I'm going to pull the trigger here on John Wall. Look good in the first shots of camp. There's a little bit of question to when Harden's going to come in and how happy he is in this situation. So I think we could be in for a nice value pick here at John Wall this late in the draft.
A little terrifying to take a guy who hasn't played in a game in 2 years, but then again, when it's the 8th round, it's considerably less terrifying. Jonas, you are now on the clock with about a minute left in the 8th round. What are you thinking?
And I know exactly who I'm taking. So I'm taking a guy that should not be available at pick 90, but because Steve Kerr spoke up and said, you know, there's an open starting spot at center between James Wiseman, Marquise Chris, and Kevin Looney. I'm like, come on. Wiseman's going to win that job easily. I'm taking him here. A guy that had 5 blocks per 40 as a freshman that only played 3 games, but this is an easy pick. Kevin Looney cannot move anymore. I'm sorry. He's done. Marquise Chris might get 20 minutes, but I think Wiseman's going to get 28, and I think he's going to be a monster.
Dalton, I was studying your face there, Dalton, to see if you would betray any reaction to the Wiseman pick. What are your thoughts on that, and where are you going here?
Yeah, a couple things. A, I don't even have a center yet, so I badly need one. And B, I'm a Warriors guy, clearly. So, yeah, that was a double swoop there. Very hurtful. Weissman, yeah, I love him, man. I'm all in on Weissman. I wasn't sure who to go with. I'm not a big college guy, so I just got into the draft once I became apparent the Warriors were going to have an early pick. And I became all in, and it seemed like it was lucky he fell number 2. It could go either way here, but I think he's going to be a nice rim protector and rim runner right away, and he's right about Looney, man. I hope the health could somehow recover, but that's an extreme long shot at this point, and Chris is horrible defender. So, yeah, Weissman, I like him quite a bit. So I will go with, before my time runs out, Steven Adams, another center, obviously a little less upside there, but new environment, new team, maybe he'll get more run. Hayes doesn't quite look ready, but yeah, I prefer Weissman, way more upside.
There's 2 names that recently got drafted I want to talk about, guys. And let's start with one of the buzz names from the real NBA draft recently went in this draft. That would be Lamelo Ball to Jared. I just want to go around the room. We'll start with you, Scott. We know what Lamelo Ball can potentially do in terms of counting stats. We also know the kind of damage he could potentially do to your percentages in a 9-category league. Is that a risk you'd be willing to take? You just took John Wall, so potentially the same kind of player statistically. Would you find yourself drafting Ball this draft season?
He'd have to fall, and this is about appropriate, I think, right here where he just went. But I already alluded to the backcourt in Charlotte being very, very deep. So if there's any type of a rookie wall that he hits, he's going to see fewer minutes. The NBA is a giant adjustment for these guys, even coming from a professional league like LaMelo is. So it's tough for me to say that I would take him. In general, I do like rookies. I think they're good risks, but I don't know that anyone in this class I'm really, really going out on a limb for. So I do like him in this spot, but I don't know how many shares I'll have of him this year.
Dalton, would you be in on Ball? And your guy Killian Hayes just went there toward the end of round 8. Where do you stack up those 2 rookie point guards?
Yeah, I personally like Hayes a little bit more this year in year 1. Ball, dealing with Graham and Rozier, the minutes there, and just the shooting percentages. So I have him a bit lower, but whatever. Obviously upsides there with the unknown. I have no problem with guys taking the unknown. I usually swing for the fence with those 2. But as far as the rookie rankings, I personally have Hayes a decent amount higher on my rankings.
Jonas, are you a drafter of rookie point guards, and are you willing to weather the percentage storm of LaMelo Ball?
Not anymore. We saw how impressive Ja Morant was last year, and he was a 12th round value. So the learning curve for point guards in the NBA is massive. I'm staying away from LaMelo. He kind of forces you into that 3-category punt, the percentages and turnovers. And he's not even a good 3-point shooter yet. I think that will come in time, but I'm kind of staying away from LaMelo. Like I said, unless you have a team with like Westbrook, Giannis, or Ben Simmons, he'd be a good fit with those guys. But for me, in this build, he's a no-go for me.
Karis Levert just went. Scott, obviously, we saw Levert lighting it up in the bubble for a stretch there. Much different landscape with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving presumably healthy in Brooklyn. Round 9, not a lot to lose, but are there concerns for you with Levert given the way the Nets have changed?
Yeah, I think there's concerns with a lot of guys on the Nets. So for me, absolutely. I don't think I'm going to take Levert here, but I understand the upside. And you're right, he did absolutely look great in that bubble. So, a pick that I'm not probably going to make, but I understand the upside here.
All right, we are coming up on you guys once again, the 3 of you in a row. It's been very civil. I don't feel like there's been. Well, I guess Scott maybe took Wiseman from Dalton there, but Dalton, you're up now with your 9th pick, the last pick you'll be making with us here before we bring in the next group. What are you aiming for?
Oh man, this is getting ugly here. Blake Griffin's Blake Griffin's gonna get hurt. I can't add him. This is a reach. I don't care. Boogie Cousins. I don't know, man. I need a center. It's not gonna come back to me for a while. If things break right, crazier things have happened. That's definitely a sleeper that could go bust quite quickly. But I need a center, so why not?
When we last saw Boogie healthy with the Warriors, he was putting up pretty good numbers. So I think in the 9th round, that's a pretty intriguing gamble. Jonas, you are now up with your 9th round pick, the last one you'll be making with us before we bring in our last group of experts. What are you looking at?
And this is a guy I was going to take around pick 75 before the Hawks signed every free agent note to man. It's Cam Reddish. I still like him a lot as a steals, assists, 3-pointers guy. Really turned it on late in the season last year. You're a Hawks guy, so you know. He's going to be a 2-way stud. I think he'll be a little stumbly out of the gate, but I think he's going to have big upside late. I think he's going to be the Atlanta Hawks' 3rd best fantasy player this year.
Yeah, I think the Danilo Gallinari coming off the bench news is potentially huge for Reddish, who could still earn that starting small forward role. So I think that's a fun pick there in the 9th round. Scott, your 9th round pick is going to be.
I'm going to homer out. I'm going to go with a former Texas Longhorn here. I'm going to take my guy, Jarrett Allen. Centers are going to start evaporating. And he really does the stuff that you're not too worried about the other guys in Brooklyn taking over. It's blocks, it's rebounds, real good field goal percentage as well for a big man. So I am absolutely going to homer out and take my Longhorn.
All right, quick parting thoughts from you guys. Dalton, your quick thoughts on your first 9 rounds.
A fun draft. I like the upside, but I have a lot of injury concerns here. But this just reminded me, it's someone who lives about an hour down the road in I-5 where the Kings play. Pretty funny to see Marvin Bagley get drafted in this round when Luka Doncic is going whenever you went first, whatever consideration. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then the Kings, they fire the people, make those decisions and just move on. But what a ridiculous franchise crushing decision. That was so obvious at the time, hate killing people after the fact. But what a joke passing on Doncic in a 2-person draft, getting the number 2 pick and blowing it. Nightmare of Kings.
All right, Jonas, want to quickly get your thoughts on your squad so far. I think you basically already declared yourself the winner of the league. Do I have that right?
Sure.
Any other thoughts on your?
Correct. Yes, I got Cat at 7, which I think is a steal. I think he's a top 3 fantasy guy. KD at 18, even if you factor in like KD, like you're factoring in 8 games missed, probably 8 or 10. So that's a steal at 18. Donnie Mitch averaged 36 points per game in the playoffs, 4.7 triples. Going to be the leap for him. Brandon Ingram, his assist percentage jumps from 16% to 25% without Drew. Another big year for him. And then JJJ, like I said, second player in NBA history to average 2.5 triples and 1.5 blocks. He's only 21 years old. He's going to be a monster when he comes back.
All right, Scott, your final word on your squad so far.
Yeah, I built this team a little bit opposite of what I like. I usually like to start at center and move backwards towards the point guards, but because Lillard fell to me at 8, and then Kawhi Leonard fell to me into the second round, I have built this team kind of opposite of what I like, but I started out with Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, and I have built from the other side moving forward with Siakam, Covington, Aldridge, Markkanen, Jarrett Allen, and John Wall. So now I think I need at least another shooting guard, small forward, because of Kawhi Leonard's concerns with sitting, and I need some point guard depth. So that's what I'm going to work on for the rest of this draft.
All right, fellas, thanks so much for joining us. You can follow these guys at Jonas Nader, at Bogman Sports, and at Dalton Del Don. All right, well, while a good draft will put you on the path toward glory, it's only half the battle. For as little as $3.99 a month, get access to our season tools to take advantage of daily, weekly, and rest of season projections, weekly positional tiers and rankings, trade analyzer, start sit tool, and much more. Go to rotoworld.com/edge for more and use the promo code DRAFT10 for $10 off any annual premium package. Here to take us the rest of the way for rounds 10 through 13, our fourth group, the final group. I'm tentatively calling this group the Killer Jays. Jaren Jackson from Rotoworld, Raphael Johnson from Rotoworld, and Josh Lloyd from Basketball Monster, who in Australia, I believe, woke up at something like 4 a.m. to join us here. So, Josh, let's start with you. You've been waiting. How's your mindset here as we get into the final rounds?
Yeah, I'm relatively happy with how the team is looking so far. I'm a little short on forwards. I've had to just really go with the forwards the last couple of rounds, but I'm pretty happy with how it's going.
Yeah, you picked first, and you took James Harden. Followed that up with Yusuf Nurkic in round 2. Raphael, you had the number 2 pick. Started off with Anthony Davis and Jimmy Butler. How are you feeling about the squad?
I'm feeling pretty good. I like the fact that I've got a lot of positional versatility in my team. Guys that can be used in multiple spots throughout the course of the season. So that's big. I'm really happy that I was able to get Killian Hayes. I know Jared wasn't too thrilled with me about that, but yeah, I was really happy to get him. I got a little nervous when Lamelo Ball and James Wiseman went off the board, but Killian's in a good spot. He's going to start right away for Detroit. So I really like him. He's my top rookie in the draft guide too. So glad to have him.
It's so late in the draft. I love a good Jaren Jackson getting angry at a pick moment. I hope we're not too late in the draft for some of those to happen. Jared, you started off with someone named Jason Tatum and Paul George. How are you feeling about what you've done so far?
I've had to change strategies a lot. I've been getting ridiculously sniped. The Ryan Jeremy Graham pick just like ruined everything for me. Let me just make this pick right here. By the way, in the previous round, instead of Boogie, this is who should have came off the board. I'm very happy to get him late. I needed a center, and I think he has a decent chance of starting in New York, honestly. Tom Thibodeau he was asked about Mitchell Robinson, and he unprompted brought up Nerlens Noel. We all know how Tibbs is, and I think that him and Noel are going to love each other. And even if Noel is just getting 20 minutes a night, as we saw last season, he's capable of putting up mid-round value. That was a need pick right there. And I don't know, I've been sniped a ton, and I've changed. Like, I was not planning on having Lamelo Ball, but I kind of like it because I didn't get the guards early, but they came to me late. Yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting draft so far.
Hey, Josh, we just saw two of maybe the scariest veterans to draft go off the board in Kemba Walker and Blake Griffin. I mean, that's insane, really, how far Kemba Walker's draft stock has fallen. Do you think we're at a point now where he's actually potentially a great value, or are you just staying away regardless?
I don't mind taking him at this point. Like, we're in round 10. This is a guy that, if he's playing, he's possibly going to be a top 50, top 60 guy when he's actually on the court. Now, of course, he's going to miss plenty of time. But at this stage, like, when you look at your team realistically, you're probably going to be dropping 4, 5, 6 guys that you draft anyway. And if he's one of those guys that you have to move on, I don't think that's the end of the world at this point in the draft anyway.
Raph, you just took a guy who a lot of people wanted to drop at points last season. He eventually turned it around, Mike Conley. What are you thinking on Conley coming into the season? How's your outlook? And speaking of people who tormented Jared last year, we can get into that later. But what are your thoughts on the Mike Conley pick?
I think he's going to bounce back. It was a tough adjustment for him in Utah. He spent his entire career in Memphis before that, obviously. But I think he's going to be a bit better in terms of his role within that team as a starting point guard. Being able to balance with Donovan Mitchell a bit better than he did last season. And also the Joe Ingles factor, too. I thought that was an impact. That was an issue for both of those guys. I think that Conley is going to be much improved this coming season.
Josh Lloyd, you are on the clock for 2 picks here. Talk us through what you're thinking.
Well, I was going to take Conley until he was just taken out of my draft. So I've got 1 forward spot to fill, but I've got back-to-back picks here. So I'm going to take a forward here. I'm a little hesitant with it, but I'll take Otto Porter at this. I think there's value in here. I'm pick 120, so I'm okay with picking Otto Porter. I think that's pretty strong value. I was also going to take Darius Bazley, who just went a couple of picks before, so that annoyed me. And then the next one I'm going to pick, who is a guy that I think is going to clearly be a top 100 guy, and that's Markelle Fultz, who a lot more playing time this year. With only a rookie, and Steve Clifford hates rookies behind him in Cole Anthony. So I think we're going to see 4 or 5 extra minutes for Fultz, and I'm pretty happy to get him at this point.
All right, well, Jared, we're going to get to you in a second because you visibly reacted to both of those picks. But Raph, you're back up here with your round 11 pick. What's it going to be?
I'm going to stick with the Utah Jazz, and I'm going to take one of the best bench scorers in the NBA, and Jordan Clarkson here.
Nice.
And he's also got point guard and shooting guard eligibility. So that's my thinking there.
We saw a recent report from that Quinn Snyder may be thinking about load managing his guys. And I guess potentially Clarkson could be the kind of guy who really cleans up on a night where the Jazz are resting, 3 guys or something like that. Is that part of the thinking for you?
Yeah, that's a part of it. I think also when we talk about load management, you've got the new reports about NBA teams being fined, but upwards of $100,000, if you sit a guy who's healthy. So we'll see how that plays into things. But yeah, they rest. They give like Mitchell a lighter workload on a certain night. Clarkson would certainly benefit.
Jared, it sounded like you were in agony over the Otto Porter and Markelle Fultz picks potentially. Did I read that wrong?
Well, here's the thing with Otto Porter. I was pretty off him. But this late in the draft, I mean, there's basically no risk and all upside at this point. There's definitely some issues. Delon! Oh my God, dude, are you kidding me? No! Okay, well, that is yet again being brutally sniped. I can't believe that.
My favorite thing about that is that happened about 30 seconds before you started talking, and you had no.
Well, I'm gonna get a guy that I like, I guess, unless Scott screws me here. What was the question? I don't know. I'm pretty distraught here. I'll just say that I'm glad I got Bogdan Bogdanovic. He has eligibility at shooting guard, small forward, and power forward. I think that he's in line for a huge year. Atlanta obviously wanted him. He's going to start there. And if you look at like his stats from the bubble, with something like crazy, like top 30 value. So to get him as late as I did, I was pretty happy about that. I'm quite furious that I didn't get Killian Hayes or Delon Wright. I can't believe that. That's absurd to me. So I'm just going to go with, I think, a guy who's extremely underrated this year. He always seems to land with me. Will the Thrill Barton.
Josh, we saw Jared's reaction to the Delon Wright pick. Delon Wright was a preseason sleeper for a lot of people last year in Dallas. That obviously backfired spectacularly. What do you think of Delon Wright as he heads to Detroit? Are you optimistic that he can kind of be the guy we hoped he could be last year?
Yeah, I had the same reaction to Jared, just a lot more internalized. I had him in my queue as well. It was a horrible fit in Dallas. I would agree. I thought he was going to be big next year next to Luke, and it just didn't work out. But assuming he's going to be starting in Detroit, I don't really see any other way around it. He'll handle the ball a little bit. I think it's a fantastic spot. When I took Fultz with my last pick, if Fultz hadn't been there, Delon would have been my guy. So pretty annoyed to see him go off the board at that spot.
Raph, we just saw Terry Rozier, Dennis Schroeder, and Rui Hachimura go toward the end there. What do you think? Do any of those picks stand out to you as sleepers that you like?
I'd say Dennis Schroeder. We don't know if he's going to start or come off the bench in LA. If he starts, you have to worry a little bit about LeBron having the ball in his hands. But Dennis Schroeder gives them a more dynamic point guard than what they had on the team last year in terms of playmaking. So I think that could be a good spot for Dennis Schroeder. Good late round value here.
Jared, have you recovered from that last round as you get ready to make your next pick?
No.
You know what you're doing here.
I mean, all my targets are gone at this point. That's credit to the room. We're drafting with a bunch of smart guys. You shouldn't be expecting to get. Oh man, just losing Killian Hayes, DeLon Wright, Jeremy Grant. These are all targets that I had, and literally within a couple picks. So feeling a little bit distraught here, but I'm just gonna go with a weird pick. I don't even like it, but there's I have a need, and we're quite late unless. Yeah, I didn't think anyone would take it. I don't know. Jeez. I don't want to make this pick, honestly. Let's see here. Is there anyone else? No. All right, I don't know. Maybe he starts. Maybe this is Marquise Chris's year. I don't know.
Well, we just saw a potential upside guy in Denny of Dijago. Josh, what do you do at the end of drafts like this? Are you just strictly aiming for upside, swinging for the fences, or are you giving it, maybe taking a boring veteran that people have overlooked?
It really depends on what I've done earlier on. Like if I've taken some swings on guys earlier, then I'll grab a little bit more of established production. But in general, with these last two picks, and I'm pretty sure one of these guys are going to fall to me. You'll see it with my last pick here coming up, that I'm going to just grab some guys who I think have got that upside. Because look, if it doesn't work out and if they don't have that role early on, I'll just, they're gone and I'll just add someone else off the waiver wire. But it does depend a little bit on what I've done, in those other rounds. But in general, if you can get a guy here that might turn into a top 70 guy, that's where, you can really make a difference in your league.
Raph, we saw one RJ Barrett go recently. He was a bit of a percentage nightmare for the Knicks last season and really didn't do a lot in defensive stats either. Do you think there's a path to fantasy production for RJ in year two?
I do. They have some good development coaches on that staff. We talk about Johnny Bryant and also Kenny Payne, who was at Kentucky before this. I think that'll help him a little bit. But he's defensive stats, he's never been one to produce that. You go back to his prep career and his one season at Duke. So I don't expect too much there. I just hope he becomes a bit more efficient of a player when it comes to the shooting percentages. I think being in year 2, having that season of experience under his belt can be helpful, but I'm not really betting on it right now.
Well, we're coming up back to you in a second, Raph. Jared, is there anything that has stood out to you? Any regrets after you took the guys that you didn't want to take? Anything you've seen that you liked after you picked?
Yeah, like I said, I think that I'm really pleased that I got Bogdanovic. It's like one of the few targets I did get. I'm going to talk myself into Lamelo Ball. He wasn't necessarily a target for me coming into this draft, but I think that the counting stats will be fun. I remember reading about the Chino Hill boys when they were coming up, and Lamelo was always kind of billed as one of the most talented of the Ball brothers. So I'm interested to see, and Michael Jordan really wanted him. So I don't know. Hey, that says something. Michael Jordan hasn't always made the best picks in the past. I think that he was on board with the Kwame Brown pick during the Wizards days, but I think that LaMelo's probably the most talented, arguably the most talented person in this draft. So, and he fell to a range. I'm not willing to take him round 6, but we got into round 8 territory. I got sniped on Jeremy Grant. So what the hell? I'd be curious to hear what Josh thinks about LaMelo.
Well, Raph, we'll hear from you in a second. Josh, Raph, you just broke your Utah Jazz streak by taking Kyle Kuzma in round 12.
Yeah.
What's the outlook for Kuzma as far as you're concerned?
He had a rough season last year with everyone back in the rotation, LeBron being healthy and Anthony Davis as well. But as we were talking about with Clarkson earlier, the potential for guys to be rested throughout the season, I think Kuzma was at his best when he had more opportunities to be like that showcase guy with the second unit scoring-wise, and I'm kind of banking on that. I think at this late in the draft, it's not too big of a risk.
All right, Josh Lloyd, you have 2 picks right now. Anyone you're excited about here?
I'm not excited about them, but I am going to take a couple of upside plays here with these last picks. The first one I'm going to take is a guy who's going to be the starting point guard in Cleveland, and that's Darius Garland.
Wow.
He wasn't great last year, but he also didn't play at all in college. He had the John Beeline nonsense that was going on, and I think he's going to improve. And again, this is what I'm using this part of the draft for, is just to take some upside picks. And the next one is an absolute wild one to me, but I have been hearing so many good things about this guy, and I think there's a chance that he might actually be a starter very early on, and his name is Facundo Campazzo from Denver. Because I just want some assists here, and if he starts next to Jamal Murray and gives me 5 assists in 25 minutes, I think that's worth it here. And if it doesn't work, then he's gone in about 2 days.
Yeah, that's a very intriguing name. A couple of intriguing names that you just pulled off the board there, Josh. Raph, you're up now with your 13th round pick. The last round is upon us, fellas. Raph, what are you looking at?
I'm kind of surprised that this guy's still on the board, and it's Dillon Brooks. I thought he had a pretty good season last year, and to get him now in the 13th round, I think might end up being a steal for me. I don't want to jinx it, but I think he's in line for a good year.
Well, we just saw Obi Toppin go to Brian Rosenworcel right there after you took Dillon Brooks. Are any of you, can anyone sell me on Obi Toppin getting enough minutes from Tom Thibodeau this year?
Absolutely not.
No chance.
Because we all love the talent, right? In the right situation, we love Obi Toppin.
Nikola Mirotic is the player who's earned the most minutes for Tibbs as a rookie, and he technically wasn't a rookie. He had played professionally overseas. He was 22 years old, and the minutes were 20. That's the most minutes a rookie has ever received under Tom Thibodeau. Chris Dunn was a number 5 overall selection, and he was at about 17 minutes. I have no faith.
I guess the only thing you could say there is Toppin is older than Mirotic was when he came across, so maybe that gives him a benefit. He's also significantly worse, and Julius Randle, Nerlens Noel, Mitchell Robinson in that front court. I can't see him getting enough minutes to be impact. Maybe it happens at some point if someone's traded, but there is no way that Tom Thibodeau is just saying, Julius Randle, you sit on the bench, play 20 minutes, so that my rookie who can't play defense can play 30 minutes a night.
Yeah.
I want to give you guys, Jared, we're going to hear from you in a second as you make your last pick. Raph, I want to give you a chance to kind of tie up the situation with your team. What are you happy with? What are you maybe not happy with? What you've done?
Yeah, I think my negative would probably be the point guards. I have Drew Holiday and C.J. McCollum. I wanted a little bit more in terms of assist production there. Wasn't able to get that just because of how things broke in the draft, but I think that would be my biggest concern. I like my bigs. You told Anthony Davis, Nikola Vucevic. I think Al Horford's going to have a pretty good year in Oklahoma City. I like the bigs, but the point guard situation in terms of assists, that's a bit of a concern for me.
And Josh, what are your parting thoughts on what you did in the draft here?
I went pretty heavy on getting guards and assists and steals, and so I'm happy how that all panned out. I'm a little light on my block numbers, but overall, I think I was able to get value. I think Kevin Love slid, Porter and Fultz outside the top 120. I was happy to get those guys there, and a couple of upside picks there towards the end. I was pretty happy with how that all went down.
Well, Jared, you're on your clock for your final pick here. 4 picks left in the draft.
I'm going to go pure upside. Let's see if he can take the role that Plumlee had, and let's see if he can make noise with 20 minutes. Mr. Bol.
Well, we've just seen 3 exciting players go in a row there. Anthony Edwards, Miles Bridges, and Bol. Miles Bridges was basically a mid-round guy last year, so when everyone wanted to draft, now goes all the way in the 13th round. Any hope for him?
I don't think so. Not with Gordon Hayward there. That's the biggest issue I see is you pay Gordon Hayward that much money. He's obviously going to be their marquee scorer, fills a clear need for them. So Bridges in that second unit, he may have some opportunities, but I don't think it's going to be enough to justify him being a mid-round guy.
Josh, before we go, Anthony Edwards, number 1 overall pick, possibly a major problem in fantasy because of percentages. Are you optimistic at all?
No, not really at all. Percentages, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks. Like, does he do any of those things? Plus, sharing the ball with D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns, Malik Beasley, Ricky Rubio is getting minutes in the backcourt. They drafted Jarrett Culver at 6 last year. It's just he's not going to be given 34 minutes a night and just be given every shot under the sun. He's going to be the 3rd, 4th option maybe. And then he has so many deficiencies in other areas of his game. So I don't mind picking him here, but in the top 100, there's no way I'd look at him.
All right, well, fellas, we're at the end of the draft. I want to say a big thanks to Group 4. You can follow these guys at J_the_truth, at Raphael J, and at RedRock_B-ball. Thanks for taking the time, fellas. Much appreciated.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, well, we're at the end of the draft now, but stay with us because Steve Alexander and Ryan Knaus are going to come back here and join us to break down the teams, do a bit of a post-mortem in just a second. First, though, do you find yourself up against the clock to get your waiver claims in, or maybe you can't decide who to start as tip-off approaches? Save time and make the best decisions with our all-new NBA League Sync tool. League Sync pulls in all of your team and league info from Yahoo to show you our draft grades for each team, who the best available players are on the wire, who you should start and who you should bench, and much more. Let League Sync do all the work, and you can take all the glory. Get League Sync, our DFS tools, and our draft and season tools as part of the Edge Plus Pro tier. Go to rotoworld.com/edge for more and use promo code DRAFT10 for $10 off any annual premium package. All right, let's bring back in Steve Alexander and Ryan Knaus. Fellas, the draft is complete. I want to first get you guys. Steve has a jacket on, first of all. There's a big headline. He's covered up the Lucas jersey. Is that what's going on, Steve?
It's freezing in my office.
Oh, I thought it was.
It's really all it is.
Your magic, Luka. Yeah, I was with Matt.
Yeah, I thought it was like, no, it's over. Well, Steve, let's start with you. You had a very eventful couple hours here. Brian Rosenworcel, I think your friendship with him is basically over at this point. What are your thoughts? Just big picture on your squad.
I haven't really had a chance to even digest it. I feel like I've got a lot of assists. I've got Trey, got LeBron, I've got Lonzo. That's pretty good. Jeff Teague is still sitting out there at the end of the draft. And with Kemba Walker's situation, I'm thinking Jeff Teague is going to be a hot waiver wire pickup right off the bat. I was kind of not happy that our buddy Jared stole Bogdan Bogdanovic. I kind of wanted him. I really got burned in the same situation last year by Marvin Bagley. but I took him in the 4th round last year. I got him in round 9 this year. I kind of waited on centers, and that can be risky in a 2-center league. I made the reach of the draft, I would say, in Chris Boucher in round 6. But Boucher can play center. He's still got a good chance at going off this year for Toronto. So, and then I've got another weird center in Draymond Green. He's not really a center. I've got another center in Serge Ibaka. He's not really a center. So I've got some issues with bigs. So I don't think I'm going to be racking up a ton of blocks. But the other reach of the draft, which may have been even more of a reach than Chris Boucher, was Michael Porter Jr. Took him in the 3rd round. That was sort of like the retaliation for not getting Luka. I just felt like Michael Porter Jr. is going to start for Denver. He's going to be really good. And I know a lot of guys in this draft really wanted to take Michael Porter Jr. I just tried to make sure that wasn't going to happen.
Ryan, let's quickly get your thoughts on your squad before we quickly run through some highlights and lowlights from each of the teams that drafted here.
Yeah, so as I said, my first pick of Giannis when he fell to 11 kind of set the tone for what I was going to do. His bad free throw percentage made me think maybe punt. Bam Adebayo was there. That kind of fed into that. Then I got Ben Simmons in round 3, and that was it. So it was a weird start for me. Usually I try to get a point guard in the first 2 rounds, let alone first 3. I didn't do that, but I still managed to get assists. So I was happy. And then I got De'Aaron Fox in the 4th round, another bad free throw shooter. So I was pleased with it. And then I stayed pretty young and healthy. Jaylen Brown, Miles Turner, a guy like Jeremy Grant and Kobe White, both stepping into bigger roles, both expected to start. So I quite like my team. I had gone into it thinking, well, 2 IR spots, maybe I get Kristaps Porzingis, guys like this who would, Kemba Walker maybe help you later in the year. Didn't end up doing that, but that's not the end of the world, obviously, because now if some of my guys do get hurt, I've got some available spots. So I'm very happy with my draft, happier than I usually am, I'll say that.
All right, well, guys, pull up the draft window if you don't have it up already. I want to quickly go through the teams in order that they drafted. So, Steve, you got it handy?
I do.
Let's look at Josh Lloyd first. Anything that you like, and we'll just bounce back and forth between you guys, anything that you like or didn't like about each of these teams, each of these drafts?
Well, first of all, I could listen to Josh talk about basketball all day long. I mean, the Australian accent, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning for that poor guy. That was pretty cool listening to him. And especially he was in the same room with Jared and hearing Josh's cool, calm demeanor and Jared throwing stuff around his office every time he got mad. It's pretty good. Pretty good pairing, I think. Yeah. Contrast, yeah. But he took James Harden with the first pick. Of course, that is a little risky given all that's going on with Harden. But if he plays, it doesn't matter where he plays. He's going to go crazy. So I don't foresee James Harden sitting out the season. But you never know. Yusuf Nurkic, bubble man, comes back at the very end of last year and then goes in the 2nd round of our experts draft. That's pretty cool for Nurkic. You got to play 2 centers in this league, so I thought that was an interesting and good pick. I really liked his 6th round pick, the Marcus Smart. With the Kemba stuff going on in Boston, Marcus Smart is probably going to be super valuable this year.
Ryan, any impressions from you? Big picture on Josh Lloyd's team.
Yeah, I was surprised by Nurk, first of all. The Rotoworld draft guide has him in 9-cat at number 26, which I thought was higher considerably than what most, his ADP for sure. But there you go. Josh Lloyd snagged him early. So I guess maybe we need to just accept that that's where he'll go. Big picture, it was an interesting mix of kind of older guys with risk, Kevin Love and Otto Porter Jr., 2 guys I'm going nowhere near this year. But then at the end of the draft, he also had younger guys with upside, pure upside. In fact, Markelle Fultz, Darius Garland, and Facu Campazzo. And, interesting picks. He just went for upside. So it was a good mix, I think, of veterans and unknown potential.
All right, next in line, number 2 pick, Raphael Johnson. Steve, any highlights or lowlights from Raf's draft?
Well, Anthony Davis to kick it off is good. Jimmy Butler, who you and I have spent a lot of time talking about on the pod. I don't think he's for us, but taking him at the end of the 2nd round, not a bad call. Vooch, super consistent center, old and reliable, as I like to call him. And Roth was really excited about getting Killian Hayes. It made Jared really mad, I think. That was fun, of course. And it'll be interesting to see what Al Horford does with his new team. It's kind of a boring fantasy player to me, but he's not going to hurt you anywhere. So, I thought Roth did a good job.
Ryan?
Horford, I don't like Horford at all, really, because he dropped off so much last year. Now he's on a team that may not even need him to play. They're looking to the future, so it's a strange fit. He seems more like a veteran mentor there, which I never like when that label is attached to my guys for fantasy purposes. But yeah, he had some good picks. I know Raph was super psyched to get Killian Hayes. He's in a great position. Expected to start right out of the gates, which is something that we were looking for. Now it's basically official. He's at least going to get first crack at it. Maybe Delon Wright displaces him, but I think there's enough size there with Hayes in particular that they can play together. So I quite like him. And I think size might be an issue because Raph only has 3 center eligible guys in AD, Vooch, and Horford. And if one of those guys goes down, you're very barren at that position in a 2-center league. So that's something he'll need to watch out for. Maybe someone like Dylan Brooks underperforms and he cuts him for a big man.
Steve, we know you didn't like when Brian Rosenworcel took Luka Doncic. What did you like about his draft?
Well, he took Luka specifically to make me angry. I don't even know that he really wanted Luka on his team that bad. So that was interesting. He's got Zion Williamson, which can he stay healthy and play all season? I think look, Luka, DeAndre Ayton, Zion Williamson, Domantas Sabonis, and DeMar DeRozan with your first 5 picks. There's a lot of interesting things there. If Zion goes crazy, if Ayton gets it together, could be a very good team. I'm not a DeRozan guy. Another interesting pick, I liked Karis Levert in round 9, which I think was also a direct shot at me. He's made a comment on the board as he was taking him, saying, "Oh, you thought you were gonna get Karis Levert, huh?" But I like Karis Levert. It's just Brooklyn is so crowded now. I don't know how that's gonna go.
Ryan, let's jump ahead to Drew Dinkmeyer have established the run. I'm just gonna have you guys each take one team here as we try to go through this quickly. What stood out to you from Drew's draft, both positive or negative?
Drew started with Jokic up top. I thought that was a great pick. He took him at number 4 overall, earlier than you'll see typically, but there's so much risk at the top of this draft that it's hard to say. You got Cat, seemed kind of out of it and admitted that mentally he wasn't quite there last year. Hopefully he, it becomes, like he said, on-court therapy, kind of where he can just go out and play the game and get it out of his system. Dame and Trey look like the safest guys at the top of the board right now, and Doncic, I suppose. But there's a lot of risk, so taking a guy like Jokic makes perfect sense. He has no red flags going into the year. Bradley Beal fell all the way down to 21. I guess that's because of concerns about usage next to Westbrook. I'm not so worried because he managed to put up elite value last year, and Westbrook will take up a bunch of possessions, but Beal can play off ball. So I think it's an interesting fit, and there aren't a lot of mouths to feed offensively in Washington, so he'll still get his huge slice of the pie. And then down the line, I thought Mitch Robinson, a bit of a reach with Nerlens Noel there. Eric Bledsoe, kind of touch and go what happens there because of, it seems like Stan Van Gundy is going to put the ball in Lonzo's hands and let him sort of be the architect. You've got Ingram, you've got Zion. So EB is a 4th option at this point, so I don't love him. And then some interesting late picks. Delon Wright was a great pick. Malik Beasley is going to fill up threes if nothing else, as will Tim Hardaway Jr., his final pick, who I was hoping to get.
All right, Steve, jumping ahead to Dalton Del Don's team. Anything stand out to you? Even 1 to 2 players each. Anything jump out at you? Favorite pick from this squad?
Steph Curry, his number 1 pick. Can't wait to see if he bounces back. Jamal Murray is coming back from a huge run in the bubble. That could be very fun. And late pick Derek White, sleeper in San Antonio.
Ryan, I think Jonas may have said he automatically won this league by getting Jaren Jackson Jr. in the 5th round. Does that or any other pick stand out to you as a big win for Jonas?
I do love the Jaren Jackson Jr. pick. As I said, especially in a league with IR spots, that's a great get at 55 overall. He's only getting better. He's got that game where he can hit threes, he can block shots, he can double. He's going to fill it up. So I really like that pick. He got Brandon Ingram at 42. I'm not so worried about a setback. Yes, his stats dipped a little bit with Zion, but too small of a sample size to say that that's a trend. And again, Ingram, another very young player who's only getting better. I thought Wiseman was a bit of a reach at 90. The Warriors have really downplayed how he will perform and how many minutes he'll get, especially early in the season. So I've bumped him outside of my top 100 in pretty much any fantasy format.
Scott Bogman drafted 8th. Steve, what did you like or not like that he did?
Scott Bogman kicked it off with Damian Lillard. He's got load management concerns with Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul. He took Robert Covington, I think is a solid asset in this format. Probably the most interesting pick Bogman had was John Wall. When's he going to play? How much is he going to play? What's his load management situation? He's also got Kemba Walker. So I think Bogman's going to be thrilled that there are 2 IR spots in this league.
We'll go to Jaren Jackson now. Ryan, thoughts?
Yeah, so Jared's funny because I know we talk a lot and go back and forth kind of refining our draft approach and stuff. So I knew a lot of the guys he was going to take before he even took them. And sure enough, he got a lot of his targets, which Clint Capella is very high on this list. Jared continually says that Clint falls too far and that he likes to get him in the 40-50 range. Well, he reached all the way up to 33 to get Capella this time. So clearly he's sold on him. I am not as high. We haven't seen him play alongside John Collins. They just brought in a rookie big man. Too many question marks there for me to go top 40 on him. I do like Hassan Whiteside, sort of a boomer bust guy in the middle rounds. That's an interesting pick, though. He was top 10 last year, which is wild. So he only needs 20-plus minutes, and he's set there. Another specialist in Rubio. He's rolling the dice on Lamelo Ball. Not a huge fan of Bogdan, but it's a good team. He went a lot of bigs and smalls, so point guards and true centers. And that's usually a winning approach in a 9-cap format. So I think he built a good team here.
Yeah, you mentioned Whiteside, the boomer bust. The boom there is actually first-round value, so potentially a ridiculously good pick at 64 overall. Two more teams to hit before we leave. Renee Miller, Steve, started with Atlanta's own John Collins, then took Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. A very exciting start to the draft. Anything that really and then Christian Wood, round 4. What really stands out to you from her draft?
Yeah, I mean, those are 3 guys that you mentioned that are on all of my lists. I was all set to take Shai in the 2nd round. She took him a few picks before me, which really that may be her paying me back for acting like I'm a doctor when she is an actual real doctor. But I wanted SGA, I wanted Collins, and I really would have liked to have gotten Christian Wood, but I knew he was going to go early. It's a 2-center league. I love the Christian Wood pick.
All right, Ryan, you picked 11th. We already talked about your team. John and Pemba from Fantasy Alarm picked 12th. Let's wrap this up with a quick thought on his squad.
Yeah, so John's team and mine were intimately entwined for me because he was right after me, right at the turn, so he was sniping me a lot. He took Devin Booker right before I took Bam. I was fine with that because those were my 1-2 guys, so that made my pick easy. He sniped me hard on Andre Drummond. I had a punt free throw percentage build going. That hurt a lot. I liked his pick of Porzingis, just kind of stash him away in an IR spot. And when he comes back, potentially January, that's when he's going to start on-court work. He might suddenly walk into a top 20 player, so that's a great pick. And final rounds, I kind of like Rui Hachimura. It slides below the radar, didn't put up a lot of defensive stats. You'd like to see that improve, but otherwise a guy in a good position.
Well, guys, that was a lot of fun overall. Thanks to both of you for sticking around afterwards. I want to thank all of our experts for drafting today. I want to thank all of you for watching as well. Keep it tuned to rotoworld.com for fantasy basketball news, columns, draft strategy, and much more. Don't forget to check out our draft guide, draft tools, and much more at rotoworld.com.